Welcome to The Explainer. So think about this. A quick glance, a single word, a fleeting first impression. We encounter strangers every single day, right? And almost immediately, this hidden biological machinery just kicks into high gear inside our heads. We instantly think, oh, I can trust her, or yeah, he is definitely lying to me. But where exactly do these incredibly fast judgments come from? And honestly, how accurate are they really? Today, we're doing a deep dive into the fascinating science behind our everyday social judgments. We're going to explore how our brains process faces, how voices literally manipulate our decisions, and how cutting-edge AI is now learning to decode our deepest secrets. So let's jump right in. When you look at a totally new face, how long do you think it takes for your brain to form a solid opinion about that person's character? Maybe a minute? A few seconds? Well, according to the data, it takes just 100 milliseconds. A literal fraction of a second is all your brain needs to make up its mind about a stranger's trustworthiness, their competence, and how dominant they are. And the crazy part? This happens way before your conscious, rational mind even realizes what's going on. So that begs the question, can you really trust a face? It kind of seems surprising that humans, creatures who pride ourselves on being so logical and rational, rely on these split-second unconscious instincts. But evolutionarily speaking, it makes perfect sense. Long before we had verbal language, for millions of years when we were just non-human primates, we relied entirely on nonverbal cues. Figuring out instantly who was a friend or a foe was quite literally a matter of life and death. If someone in your tribe looked terrified, well, your life was probably in danger too. And our brains, they're still completely hardwired with that exact same survival instinct today. Now, you might be thinking this is just ancient history, but these survival reflexes have massive consequences right now in the real world. These subconscious impressions dictate so much of our society. The research shows that political candidates in the US who simply look more competent are actually more likely to win elections for senator or governor. Attractive people, they consistently earn higher salaries. And this is the wildest part. Defendants who happen to possess facial features that we subconsciously perceive as untrustworthy actually receive longer, harsher criminal sentences. It even factors into capital punishment decisions. So yeah, our snap judgments are driving very real outcomes. All right, moving into part 1, faces, voices, and lies, reading intentions. So we don't just judge character, we're constantly trying to guess people's underlying intentions. But honestly, pop culture has completely misled us here. We've all seen those Hollywood crime shows where the brilliant detective spots a liar just by catching a micro-expression, some tiny millisecond-long twitch in a facial muscle. But the scientific reality is way less dramatic. Most of the time, humans operate at a mere chance level when trying to guess if someone is lying. Spotting a liar purely through facial twitches is next to impossible. But ironically, researchers found something called the pink elephant effect. If a lie is super important and you try your absolute hardest not to show it, your intense effort actually makes your deceptive cues way more obvious. To see this in action, there's this fascinating experiment by researcher Mark Swartz involving kids. He had them play a game where they told the truth to a prince character, but they had to lie to a dragon to hide the prince. When they were telling the truth, the kids had totally open, spontaneous faces and used soft, warm voices. But when they lied to the dragon, knowing they had to pull one over on it, their faces got super tense around the mouth. But the biggest giveaway? Their vocal tone shifted. They started using this slightly creaky voice. It turns out our voices can actually betray our lies way more than our faces ever do. And this really brilliantly illustrates why vocal cues are almost impossible to fake. Generally, we're pretty good at controlling our facial muscles, but our voices, that's a whole different story. Think about it. Every single sound you make requires the split-second coordination of over 100 different muscles working in perfect harmony. Your chest and abdomen create air pressure. Your tongue and lips shape that air, and your vocal cords vibrate at highly specific frequencies based on your emotions. Emotions involuntarily change the muscular tension in your body, and that instantly changes the tone of your voice. You literally cannot hide it.
Which brings us to part 2, charismatic voices and the power of mimicry.
So if our voices are constantly broadcasting our internal feelings, how does that affect the people we talk to? Well, it all comes down to a biological reflex called emotional mimicry. When you're chatting with someone, you subconsciously connect with them by internalizing their mood, their excitement, their anxiety as if it were your own. You naturally start matching their tempo, their intonation, and even their facial expressions. And the stronger your desire to be liked, the more intense this syncing gets. Think about the Mona Lisa effect. The reason that painting is so universally famous is that seeing a smiling face literally triggers happiness and a subconscious instinct to smile right back. We tune our own biology to match the people around us. Let's look at how this creates what we call charisma. Phonetician Oliver Niebuhr spent years analyzing exactly what makes a voice persuasive. And guess what? It isn't magic, it's acoustic variation. Through computer analysis, he found that the most engaging charismatic voices constantly vary their pitch across roughly 2 whole octaves. They don't just talk, they create a sort of melody. They alternate between loud and quiet, fast and slow. By packaging their words with dynamic shifts and strategic pauses, the speaker actually reduces the cognitive load on the listener's brain, making them inherently more likable and way more persuasive.
And to prove just how powerful a charismatic voice is, researchers ran this unbelievable sat-nav experiment. They had people drive while following GPS instructions. Halfway through the route, the GPS deliberately started giving terrible, totally incorrect directions. Drivers who were listening to a standard, boring, robotic voice, they quit and ignored it almost immediately. But the drivers who were given a highly expressive, persuasive GPS voice actually kept following the wrong route for much longer. They completely ignored their own rational judgment. The researchers literally had to call the drivers on their phones to say, "Hey, it's just a test. Please turn around." That is the absolute power of an engaging voice.
Okay, let's jump to part 3. AI listens to secrets. Decoding the voice. For millions of years, these biological signals were meant purely for other human ears. But today, technology is taking the wheel. Prepare for a real wow moment here. At the start of the pandemic, researcher Bjorn Scheller programmed an artificial intelligence to diagnose whether a person had COVID-19 or just a regular cold simply by analyzing a tiny audio recording of their voice. Trying to do this with the human ear would be basically impossible. But the AI, it hit an astonishing 85% correct diagnosis rate, just from hearing them speak a few words.
To understand how it does this, we have to look at what the AI is actually listening for. It analyzes up to 6,000 different vocal cues that our human ears literally cannot detect. For COVID-19, it's hunting for microscopic throatiness, tiny bits of breathlessness, and uncontrolled vocal cord vibrations. But it doesn't stop there. AI is now being used to identify Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, ADHD, and even depression, all just by analyzing a voice. Because every sound requires those 100+ muscles working perfectly, anything going wrong in your body or your brain instantly impacts your voice. The AI essentially treats your voice like an auditory fingerprint of your overall health.
But wait, analyzing data is one thing. Actually interacting with us like a human is a completely different ballgame. Meet Furhat, a social robot designed to interact with people by using human-like mimicry. Furhat tracks your head pose so it knows exactly who is speaking in a group. It figures out when to smile, when it should nod, and exactly how much eye contact is normal. But scientists are quickly realizing that programming the incredibly subtle nuances of human social interaction is massively tricky. A single sentence can mean a dozen different things depending on your mood, your body language, or the specific occasion. So while AI is getting perfect at diagnosing our diseases, mimicking our complex social behaviors remains a huge, huge hurdle. Finally, let's head into part 4, unlearning biases and rewiring the brain. As we integrate AI deeper into every part of our lives, we really have to confront the darker side of our brain's rapid predictions. See, a lot of people think AI is this perfectly neutral, completely objective machine. But the data makes it clear. If you feed an AI media where specific minority groups are constantly linked with hostility or crime, the AI is going to pick up on those patterns, and it will act biased. The AI basically mirrors the exact same collateral damage that stereotypes leave in the human brain. It doesn't erase our biases, it just reflects them right back at us. So why do we do this in the first place? To understand why, we have to look at John Freeman's fMRI research into what we could call the brain's lazy loop. Why do we stereotype? Honestly, because the brain wants to save metabolic energy. It's lazy. If you walk into a restaurant, your brain already expects to see tables, chairs, and waiters. You don't burn visual resources analyzing every single object to figure out what it is. You just generate rapid expectations to fill in the gaps. And guess what? We do the exact same thing with human faces. We activate learned stereotypes instantly just to save our brain time and energy. It's a biological shortcut. But here is where it gets really fascinating and honestly pretty hopeful. Freeman did this experiment to see if he could create a brand new stereotype right out of thin air.
He showed test subjects' faces with a wide cilium, which is just the bridge of your nose. It's a completely arbitrary, meaningless facial feature, but 80% of the time, he paired these wide-nosed faces with trustworthy behaviors in a game. And within just a couple of minutes, the test subjects were automatically, subconsciously activating a brand new stereotype. They started viewing all wide-nosed faces as naturally trustworthy. And this brilliantly highlights our ultimate takeaway from all of this. Our brains are incredibly flexible. The neuroplasticity, the ability of the brain to change, that allows us to absorb negative societal biases or learn to trust a wide nose bridge in 5 minutes, is the exact same mechanism that gives us the power to overwrite these split-second reflexes. We are not permanently at the mercy of our snap judgments. With a little bit of conscious training and awareness, we absolutely have the power to unlearn our hidden biases.
So I want to leave you with a final pretty provocative thought to chew on. If our brains are so amazingly adaptable that we can build a brand new stereotype in a matter of minutes, what could we achieve as a society if we actively and consciously chose to unlearn them? The very next time you make a snap judgment about a stranger's face or voice in 100 milliseconds, just take 1 second to ask yourself, who is really making that decision right now? Is it your rational mind, or is it just an ancient, lazy loop? Thank you so much for exploring the science of snap judgments with me today in this explainer. I will catch you on the next one.